Hello everybody and welcome back to Magic Things with Alejandro. Please don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button so we can grow this channel. Today we're gonna be looking at my Atraxa Commander deck. This bad girl right here. With the reprint and double masters, it should be more accessible for people to build this deck. It's already very popular, so let's see what's inside. So yes, one of my favorite commander decks, Atraxa Predator's Boys. It's a flying vigilance death touch lifelink 4-drop for 4/4 that at the beginning of your end step you proliferate. Basically you put additional counters to permanents that you have and control. So let's start with the creatures. The list is gonna be available in the comments and description for the video. This Winding Constrictor guy, he is really good for Atraxa because he could get an additional counter in when you have it out. Heliod from Pioneer, they banned that combo with Ballista. Basically, whenever you gain life, you can put a +1/+1 counter on target creature or enchantment you control. So if you have this out and Ballista as your pinging people for life, it's gonna have lifelink, and well, you have to also pay the white and the other for this, and you just ping away, and Ballista is basically infinite counters on it. We have Borel of the Whole Clade. You can double the counters on a artifact, creature, or land that you have. So super bonkers with this. The Lotus Cobra is one of my spicy cards in this deck. You just add mana of any color when you drop a land down. So this is getting reprinted in the Syndicate Rising with the old new landfall mechanic. So this is a maybe on this deck. The Phantom Mage, you evolve it. Whenever you get +1/+1 counters, you can get +1/+1 counters out on it if a creature that you have comes into play that has the power or toughness greater than this creature. So it's a 1/1. If you bring in a 2/2, and you can put a +1/+1 counter on the mage and so on. Night of Autumn is just crazy. You can do all kinds of things with it. You can get counters on it, destroy a target artifact or enchantment, gain 4 life. This is the part of the Infect. A lot of people build Infect around Atraxa. So Hand of the Predators is a pretty good choice for this. And if you have other Infect creatures, it's a Lord, so they will get +1/+1 counters on them. I mean +1/+1 effect on them. And whenever you cast a creature spell with Infect, that target player gets a poison counter, so you can proliferate the Infect counters. Another great Infect creature is the Blinded Agent. It's just untouchable. So another part of this deck is to put counters on creatures. So whatever cards can put counters on creatures and then you can proliferate it are also great. So the Forgotten Ancient, every time you cast a spell, you may put a +1/+1 counter on Forgotten Ancient. At the beginning of your end step, or your upkeep, I'm sorry, you may move any number of +1/+1 counters from Forgotten Ancient onto other creatures. So this is a good way of getting counters. This is another way of putting counters on your creatures. Shalai is also a great defense for any kind of red players or anything that makes you destroy creatures. They get hexproof your creatures and your planeswalkers and you, but Shalai doesn't get hexproof, so whenever they get rid of Shalai, that's pretty much it for this card. But the great thing about this is the 4 and the 2 forests that you need to pay, so you can get a +1/+1 counter on each creature. Then we have the biogenic ooze. It makes an ooze when it comes into play, and in your end step you put a +1/+1 counter on each juice you control. It just gets crazy. The Birds of Paradise is just for mana fixing. Another great infect creature that flies is the Viral Drake, and this actually has built-in Proliferate inside of it, so you can imagine how crazy that starts to get. The Enduring Scale Lord is flying. Whenever one or more +1/+1 counters are put on a creature you control, you may put a +1/+1 counter on Endurance Scare Lord. So this is just keeps going and going and going. The Master Biomancer. Each creature you control enters the battlefield with additional +1/+1 counters on equal to the Master Biomancer's power, and as a mutant in addition to other types. So you can only imagine, you start growing this thing and then you can start putting counters on other things. It's just crazy. Whenever a card, the Vulture Zombie, whenever a card is put into the opponent's graveyard from anywhere, put a +1/+1 counter on Vulture Zombie. Usually this doesn't last very long. People want to kill this thing as soon as possible. Another logical thing that you can put in this deck is the Herald of Secret Streams. Basically, all your creatures with counters are unblockable. So, insane. I have won so many games doing that. The Plague Stinger is a flying infect 1/1 creature. Just once again, just keeping up with the infect theme. This card is insane in this deck. So when the Gave Guru of Spores comes in, you get 5 counters. So if you remove a +1/+1 counter from a creature you control, you can get Sapperling. If you sacrifice a creature, you can put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. So you can just see how this could potentially just make you a bunch of Sapperlings. Or you start taking out counters and sacrificing creatures or the Sapperlings and put counters on a target creature and then start proliferating. It just goes crazy. Borash the Hunter. This one is one of my favorite cards in this deck. It's a flying 6/6 guy. It's kind of expensive to cast, but whenever it deals combat damage, you can pay a green and 2. If you do, you get another 6 counters on Borash. That is usually game-ending situations. It doesn't go much longer than that afterwards. You start just getting 6/6 start growing by 6 counters, and it just goes crazy. The Scavenging Ooze, Graveyard Hate, and you start putting counters on the Ooze. If you start exiling the proper cards, it's a creature card? Yes, a creature card. And you gain 1 life. The Hydras are really good in this deck as well. One of my favorite ones is the Colonian Hydra. It's a trample, which is really good. I mean, it could fly, I guess, but the fact that it's trampled, it can be shot blocked by little creatures. So comes up with 4 counters into play, and then when it attacks, you get to double the number of +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. So you can just see the craziness that could happen with this. Now for the Planeswalkers, Ajani, Mentor of Heroes, is a great way of putting counters into creatures you control. They usually want to kill this guy real quick. So the +1, you distribute 3 +1/+1 counters among 1 or 2 or 3 target creatures you control. The Karn, Scion of Ursa, basically just is card draw. Also, you can make the construct for the -2. It's pretty sweet as well, especially if you have a lot of artifacts. Tamio, the Immune Sage. You can control people from attacking you with the +1 ability. The -2, you can draw as many cards as possible. It's so good against especially a 4 people pool. And of course, Oko is just insane. I mean, the ability to just make anything an elk, and that's why it's banned in pretty much every single format. So a logical option in this deck. Jace, the Mind Sculptor. I mean, the fact that you can for 0 brainstorm is just insane. For the sorceries, we have Dune Blast. You choose up to 1 creature, usually your creature, or Atraxa herself, and you destroy all the other creatures. So insane board wipe. Vindicate, destroy target permanent is just so good. It's like Assassin's Trophy, but you don't give a land out. Cultivate is just so good for mana fixing. You can get 2 basic land cards. Demonic Terror, I mean, there is not much to say about this card. The fact that you don't have to show anybody and you just get a card out of nowhere and they don't know what it is pretty crazy. Tesser's Gambit, the Phyrexian mana, you pay 2 life. For Commander, it's not that big of a deal usually to pay 2 life. You get to draw 2 cards and proliferate, which is insane. The Temporal Manipulation, you take an extra turn. You can also put Nexus of Faith in this place, pretty cool. The Sylvan Reclamation, so good for dealing with artifacts and enchantments. The counter spells, you have Disallow. You counter target spell, activated ability or trigger ability. It's just so good. There's also Force of Will. You want to put that in there instead of that, or in addition to, would be great. Dig Through Time. Just the fact that you can, because this deck doesn't really care about the graveyard. So once you put out the graveyard, cards in the graveyard don't really matter. So you want to put the 7 cards. Look at the top 7 cards of your library. So this is just insane fixing. Vampiric Terror is just a great way of getting a card. It's the little drawback that you have to pay 2 life, but I mean, for the mana cost, for 1 converted mana cost, it's insane. Mortify, destroy target creature or an enchantment, is just great removal as well. Nature's Claim, more artifact and enchantment hate. A lot of decks in Commander run a lot of crazy things like that, so you want to take them out. Putrefy, destroy target artifact or creature, it can be regenerated. So good. The counter spell of all counter spells, Dolbin's Veto. counter spell, scanning an non-creature spell, and this spell can be countered itself. The plow or swords, depending on what you want to call that. I think most people call it swords, as a matter of fact. You exile a creature, and creature's controller gains life equal to the creature's power. The actual brainstorm itself, an original counter spell for 2 blue mana. I got the fancy Jay's spellbook one. And then we start talking about the artifacts. We have the Spell Bomb, just more graveyard hate, you never know. The Chromatic Lantern is a commander staple. Everybody wants to run this thing just for mana fixing. This guy, the Cornucopia, is insane with the card charge counters on this. It's a little bit expensive because of the 3 X's, so you have to pay, in order to get to 2 counters, for example, you will have to pay 6 mana, right? So it will be 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2 in order to get the 2 counters. But I mean, even at 3 and you just get a counter in there, you choose a color and you get mana equal to the charge counters on this thing. It's just insane. Once again, for Proliferate, I have gotten this thing to like 10 counters. It's just crazy. The Chalice with the multi-kicker, once again, a great addition to this deck because you can proliferate the Chalice. Mana Bolt, it's a commander staple. Everyone wants to run it, but you have to put back the mana to untap it. Actually, more mana that you get, or if not, it gives you a 1 damage to yourself. This is another one that everybody wants to run in Commander, the Mana Crypt. At the beginning of your upkeep, you flip a coin. If you lose the flip, the Mana Crypt deals 3 damage to you. But at 0 CMC is pretty good. Probably one of the biggest Commander staples of all time, the Soul Ring, a 1 mana for 2 colorless. Crucible of Worlds, great for fetch lands, and if they start destroying your lands, such a cool thing to have. The Lightning Graves, I usually protect Atraxa or other creatures that might be target of hate when I'm playing this. The Crystalline Crawler, such a good card for this deck. Basically, you get a +1/+1 counter for each color that it was meant to cast. Usually, I cast it with the 4 different colors because it has 4 CMC. So, since Atraxa is green, white, blue, and black, you can I usually use those color combinations to put this out. And if you remove a counter from it, it adds a mana to you. So that's pretty insane, I would say. Also, Vajani is I usually use it like Shalai, that with its ability to, when it comes into play, you put a +1/+1 counter to each creature you control. Remember, the goal of this deck is just to put counters on creatures so they can proliferate. And an additional bonus that is pretty good is that you can use -1 to the casting cost for your planeswalkers, which is great. But I mean, so there's 2 different ways that this could go, right? A lot of people play Super Friends. So Super Friends is a bunch of planeswalkers in the deck. Or you can go Infect. I cannot have both on them. It's pretty cool to me. I don't know. And maybe somebody can say some comments down below so you can let me know what you think about that. Rhystic Study, another commander staple. Basically, if you play in a 4-player pod, you start drawing your library out. It's just insane. Unless people start paying mana for each time they do something. Path of Discovery, another way of doing shenanigans with Atraxa. Basically, every time a creature comes out, it explores. So you pretty much gamble to see if you get a +1/+1 counter by ruling top card of your library. Simic Ascendancy, amazing way of getting counters on creatures. And this is another one that puts a timer on the clock. If you get 20 counters on it, you win the game. Hardened Scales, I would say another Commander staple, is also a modern, very playable modern card. If one or more counters will be put on a creature you control, that many +1 counters, +1/+1 counters are put into it instead. And of course, double in season, because why not? We need to win more. Basically, it doubles the counters and tokens that will be created. So, super crazy things for sure. Another great commander card that is basically where Ravnica Allegiance came out, started popping everywhere, is the Sundering Tide. Whenever an opponent draws a card, the player may pay 2. If the player does not, you create a colorless treasure artifact token. We sacrifice this artifact, add 1 mana, 1 color to your mana pool. So this is like kind of like Ristic Study, but for mana. So you can go crazy with the treasure tokens. And then we get to the fun part of this video, which is the lands. If you want to get competitive, you got to spend a lot of money on lands, basically. So they got the Polluted Delta for the fetch lands. You can do cycle lands like the Fairy Pools. You can do check lands like the Woodland Cemetery. I have swamps, and I have one of each, I believe. I have 1 swamp, 1 island, 1 plains, and 1 forest. The Larian Carrier Towel, obviously you want to, especially if you have Ristic Study or something like that out, you just keep drawing cards. The tower is something that you need to have. Then we have the tri-lands, like the Seaside Citadel, just for mana fixing. That's another one of the basics that I have. The Scry lands, I don't know how good they are. This one was in place actually for a breeding pool, but also could be great to have. It's kind of slow. The Irrigated Farmland, just to have more card draw. We have the dual lands, so if you want to step into that situation, great to have as well. The Bayou, great for not losing life when they come into play, or additional effects that you may have. It's just flat out a 2 mana card. You have the island, another fetch land, another check land, the Hidden Land Harbor, and then we have the Battle Bond lands. These are pretty cool too. If you have in a port of 4, these are great to have. Pretty much as a dual land at that point. The Urborg, Tomb of Jackmoth, everything is a swamp in addition to other land types. Another fetch land, because you can never have too many fetch lands. Another check land. Then we start having the shocks like Hollow Fountain, just a good way of getting more mana in there. We also have the lands from Kaladesh that it checks if you have 2 or fewer lands. We have other ones like the Nimbus Maze, that if you have an island, you can use that as an island. If you have a plains, you can use it as a plains. So basically another dual land, but you have to have the basics, or other cards that are islands or plains. Another cycle land, and then if you start getting crazy, you start doing like Sarah's Sanctum. I have some Cradles, but I don't play them because They're close to $1,000 a piece now, so I stopped playing with them. But also, it's a great addition to this deck. And just because a gemstone mine, you have Atraxa out, you know what happens. You can proliferate it and basically just keep getting mana out of this thing. It's just insane. Another shock land, overgrown tombs, and then you have the Trinomi lands. So, for example, if this was out and the maze was out as well, that we were talking earlier, that will have the synergy for that. So you would be able to tap it for blue as well. So things like that are awesome for synergy. The Opal Palace, because just to cast your commander with a +1/+1 counter is just great on the Atraxa. The Rupture Spire, another Shockland, the Watery Grave, the Command Tower, another command staple, and this is the older Trinomi land, which is great for this deck. Another basic, the Forest. Especially if you're playing a pot of 4 and multiple colors are going on, you can potentially just have a mana of any color that an opponent can produce. Otherwise, it's gonna be kind of tough if they have like a single. For example, if I play against mono red, that land would be kind of bad. You have the Concealed Courtyard, City of Brass, another great way of mana fixing. The Temple Garden for the shock value, giggity. The Flood Strand for the other shock land, fetch land, and last but not least, another one of those tri lands. So there you have it. Check out the description for the deck list. Let me know what you think. I have a lot of fun playing this deck. It's one of my favorite commander decks. I don't play commander very often, so let me know in the comments what you think. Take care.